Hello everyone and welcome to the video, and today we're going to be talking about the Unkillable vampire build for Elden Ring. This is an amazing build that mixes lifesteal with amazing survivability and high defense, as well as some pretty solid damage in an Arcane build. But before we get into the video, I would like to ask you guys to please drop a sub to the channel. It would help me out so much and I would really appreciate it, as well as a like on the video if you enjoyed the build. Another thing I wanted to mention was that if you guys have any trouble getting any of the items for the build, as well as any runes you may need or specific gear, you can go to aoa.com and use code SERAPH. I'll put the link in the description. You can get 3% off and you can get any item in the game. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. So the first thing we always talk about is the gear of the build. So for this build specifically, we are using two Scavenger's Curved Swords. I have one of them with a blood infusion, which gives us 107 blood buildup, and then I have another one with the occult infusion, which gives us better damage and better arcane scaling with a little bit less blood buildup. For our sacred seal, we are using the Dragon Communion seal. This scales with faith in arcane, so it's very good for the build. For the fashion of the build, we are using Dialos Mask, followed by Hoslo's Armor, Knight's Cavalry Gauntlet, and Knight's Cavalry Greaves. And for the talismans, we are using the Dragon Crest Great Shield, the Godskin Swaddling Cloth, Taker's Cameo, and then Lord of Blood's Exaltation. The last two can actually be substituted out. You can use the Spelldrake Talisman or any other of these talismans that greatly boost specific damage types. So before you go into a boss fight, if you want a little bit more damage negation, you can throw one of these on. They work wonders, especially against bosses that specifically deal damage through that damage type. You're going to be able to tank a lot more. As well as you can throw in the Pearl Drake Talisman. I don't have it on this account, but it boosts all of the non-physical damage negation. For the Flask of Wondrous Physic, we are using the Opaline Hards here. This boosts all damage negations that aren't physical. And then we have the Crimson Burst Crystal Tear. This steadily restores HP. And we're also using the Uplifting Aromatic Perfume. This increases our attack power and gives us a bubble. Since we could have 7 of these, we can essentially have 7 bubbles per fight, which is incredibly useful. For the stats of the build, we are level 150. We have 55 Vigor, 15 Mind, 35 Endurance, 12 Strength, 21 Dexterity, 14 Intelligence, 30 Faith, and 47 Arcane. For the incantations of the build, we are using Black Flames Protection, followed by Golden Vow, and then Bestial Vitality. And for the damage of the build, we have the Swarm of Flies and Rotten Breath. So now I'm just going to play a couple clips in the background. This one specifically is just me buffing up and showing you exactly how much damage resistance you do get. It's the number is pretty insane. Now I just want to talk a little bit about a few parts of the build that I didn't really touch on. So the first one is the fashion of the build. The fashion looks amazing in my opinion. It really fits the theme of the kind of blood and vampire build. However, it is not the best option that you can have. Obviously, if you wanted to maximize the efficiency of this build and be as tanky as possible, you would opt for the Bull Goat armor instead. However, for me, I prioritized fashion, so you could have this build and make it even better if you wanted to. But as you can see, the damage resistances are absolutely insane. The negation that you get for all damage types is incredible for this build. It makes you very tanky, and mixed with the fact that you have 7 free hits, because you have 7 bubbles, is also very useful, especially against bosses that have one-shot potential like Melania. You can easily negate the entire attack essentially. Also, another thing I wanted to mention was that all of the clips that I have are in New Game Plus, so the bosses do hit much harder and do have a lot more health. So another thing I wanted to mention about the stats of the build, because as you guys may have noticed, I have pretty high intelligence. That's just because of the class that I started with. I started with the prisoner class. I wouldn't recommend going any in intelligence. Basically, all you want to do is spec into vigor. You want to have enough strength and dex to be able to wield the scavenger curved swords. I have enough to wield the Rivers of Blood katana, which is a beautiful replacement. If you didn't want to use the curved swords, you can easily use the Rivers of Blood. However, you don't get as many successive attacks, so you don't get a lot of health back, so I opted to just use the curved swords instead. But the damage on the Rivers of Blood is pretty undeniable, so if you wanted to use them because they have really good range, you could easily do that and the build would work just as well. So with all that being said, I honestly think that this is one of the better builds in the game. I believe that the amount of defense that you have with this build is so great for boss fights and all PvE content. I haven't actually used it much for PvP. I mostly just wanted to get this video out as fast as I could, but I'm assuming it works very well for PvP as well, since you're very tanky and you can withstand a lot of the attacks that people are going to throw at you. And the reason why I feel as though this build is so amazing and one of the better builds in the game is just because no other builds really have this amount of defense mixed with damage, because I'm not only just throwing all defense at you with not a lot of damage, it is a primarily arcane based build, so you do have pretty incredible damage. The bleed buildup happens fast, and it does tons of damage. So with that being said, that's pretty much it for today's video. If you guys have any specific builds you want to see, you can comment them below in the comment with the most likes. I will make that build. So whatever you want to see, just comment it. But with that being said, that's pretty much it for today's video. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.